Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I'm Pirzada Muhammad Rafiq, and I welcome you all to my online video lecture series. These video lectures are brought to you by Government CM's Model Boys Higher Secondary School, Kupwara, with an aim to compensate the academic loss caused because of outbreak of COVID-19. All right, this is my third lecture, and as I received many calls and many text messages from my students to upload a video about construction or the structure of simple, compound, and complex sentences. So today I'm going to discuss the structure of these sentences, but I'm not going to plunge in right away. Instead, I would like to make you understand some basic terms which are used when it comes to the framing and structure and construction of these three types of sentences. All right, so the first point is a clause. Clause. You might have heard, you might have learned about a clause. We generally say a clause is a sentence which has got a complete meaning. But my dear students, I do not agree with that definition. Because had a clause been a complete sentence, there wouldn't have been a dependent or a subordinate clause. All right? So, for better explanation, let me write a sentence. Look at the sentence. It is, I know your brother. I know your brother who is a teacher. Can you find there's actually a combination of two sentences there? The first part is I know your brother. I know your brother. Don't you find it a complete sentence? I know your brother. Yes, I know your brother. It's a complete sentence. It gives a complete meaning. It does not depend on any other sentence to derive its meaning. All right. Now look at this part. Who is a teacher? Had there been a note of interrogation or a question mark at the end of this sentence, this would have been a meaningful sentence. All right. But alone, who is a teacher, does not carry a well-defined meaning. Who is a teacher? So, both these sentences, who is a teacher and I know your brother, these are clauses. All right? But in this case, I know your brother, there's a complete meaning. So this clause is called a principal clause or a main clause. All right? While as this, who is a teacher, which needs some support, this clause needs some support. This is called a dependent or a subordinate clause. So, what I say, or what is correct to say about a clause, is that it's a part of a sentence. A clause is nothing but simply a part of a sentence. As we say in case of mathematics, like a line segment. It can be very long, it can be very short. All right, same thing happens here. If it gives you a complete meaning, it's known as an independent clause or a principal clause. But if it needs a kind of help or a kind of support from any other clause, in that case, the clause will be known as a subordinate clause. All right. Now, let's discuss what this simple clause means. How is it constructed? What's a compound? What's the simple sentence? What's a complex sentence? What's a compound sentence? Okay. An independent clause stands alone syntactically as a sentence. Now look at the first case, simple sentence. In simple sentence, what do we actually have? We have only a single independent clause, which means it has one independent clause only. One independent clause. Means a sentence having its subject, a verb, or subject predicate, all right, which has got a complete meaning or which can stand syntactically. So this is how we form it. It contains one independent clause. Say, for example, I was working with your father. I was working with your father. All right. So this sentence does not need any kind of support from any sentence. Such kinds of sentences are known as simple sentences. All right. That's how this simple sentence is formed. Now moving to compound sentences. What do we generally have in compound sentences? We have two independent clauses. This is one independent clause and we have one more independent clause. All right. Now look at the example. I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you. That's a complete sentence. An independent clause. I was waiting for you. You did not come. Again, you did not come. This is also a simple sentence, or it's also an independent clause. Now, if I join these two sentences together, all right, I was waiting for you, but you did not come. You did not come. Do you find something that joins these two sentences to form one sentence? Of course, yes. A word, but. All right. So what actually happens? This compound sentence contains two independent clauses joined by something, and that something is known as a conjunction. Okay. So this conjunction, in case of compound sentences, is called a coordinating conjunction. A coordinating conjunction. Two independent clauses, which means two simple sentences. Okay, if I hide this but for some time, you will find two simple sentences actually. I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you. It's a simple sentence. A simple sentence. Under independent clause. You did not come. Another simple sentence. But now these two sentences have been joined by something. And this something actually is known as a conjunction. In case of this compound sentence, this conjunction is known as a coordinating conjunction. All right. Next we have complex sentences. Complex sentences. Here you will see how a clause is not always meaningful. Okay? A complex sentence contains one independent clause and one subordinate clause. Subordinate clause. One independent clause and one subordinate clause. Say, for example, if I said, I know your uncle. I know your uncle. That's a complete sentence. Falls under independent clause. All right. Who is a doctor? I know your uncle who is a doctor. See, in the first case, I know your uncle is a complete sentence, and in the second case, who is a doctor? Who is a doctor? Say suppose somebody saying, who is a doctor? If it's not a question, who is a doctor? It does not give a complete meaning. All right, so this second clause needs some support, and it gets a complete meaning from independent clause. If we join these two sentences together, the sentence goes like, I know your uncle who is a teacher. Now see, I know your uncle who is a teacher. This who actually joins these two clauses together, independent clause and subordinate clause. So in this case, you'll see this who here works as a bridge between these two clauses. So is the structure of these complex sentences. One independent clause, one subordinate clause, and then a conjunction. Of course, a conjunction. But dear students, as we learned, in case of a compound sentence, we have a coordinating conjunction. But in case of a complex sentence, we have a subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunction, which bridges these two clauses together and makes them a single sentence. So this was about simple, compound, and complex sentences. We only discussed structure or the construction of these three types of sentences. Let me repeat again. A simple sentence contains only one independent clause, And a complex sentence contains two independent clauses, which means actually two simple sentences joined by a coordinating conjunction. While as this complex sentence, it contains one independent clause and one subordinate clause joined by a conjunction. But in case of this complex sentences, this conjunction is actually known as a subordinating conjunction. Now, there's an interesting thing to learn. What is that? You know what's an adjective? Adjective is simply a word that qualifies a noun or a pronoun. A word qualifying another word. Noun is also a word, pronoun is also a word, adjective is also a word. Now this adjective qualifies a noun or a pronoun. Now think for a while, if one part of the sentence qualifies or describes another part of the sentence, what shall we call that sentence? Let's see. I know your uncle, this was independent. This sentence was independent so far. Who is a teacher or is a teacher? This was before this subordinating conjunction. This was a dependent clause. It had no identity of its own. But when it was connected to this part of the sentence, it got its meaning. In return, what it does, it starts describing this independent clause. It starts describing, this part now starts describing the other part of the sentence. So this part now will be known as an adjectival clause or a relative clause. Relative clause. Relative clause or adjectival clause or adjective clause. It works or it functions the same way as an adjective does in case of a noun or a pronoun. So this was all about the structure of simple, compound, and complex sentences. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Stay connected.